Hello, and welcome back to the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. I'm your host, Green Mays, joined by my awesome co-host, Daniel Beatro. How are you, Daniel?
I am good, as always. Looking forward to today's podcast talking about Biden and his words on a young 12-year-old while he was 30. She was 12 and I was 30, to quote the president of the United States.
He's a very, very romantic guy in all the wrong ways. So, with that being said, before we get started, check out lpmises.com. You can go to our website, sign up to be a delegate, also take a look, see what is going on with that, and keep the ideals of Ron Paul, Murray Rothbard, and the amazing libertarians who are moving us in that direction alive. And just to share something about a internal vague post, because it is internal, it is vague, but I think some big things are going to be kicking off, and that is the scope and scale of what the Mises Caucus has in store for the next big long-term campaign is going to blow people away. Hint, hint, maybe Dave Smith. It's the accumulation of months and months of planning and preparing our whole board and our 250 plus organizers. We're on the first step of our lunch program, and it will be fully public in a few weeks' time. So if you're part of Mises, if you're interested in the decentralized revolution, keep that in mind. Also, if you want to be involved, you can let me know or go to lpmises.com. But some big things are going to be kicking off within a few weeks. All right, let's talk about Darth Brandon, as I call him, because he's been pretty mad, but now he's telling some jokes. I guess he chilled out. He said the scam, the thingy, majiggy with the scary beer flu is over, but I think there's still 2 pandemics. We have over 100 governments in the world, so we can fix that. And men's tea is still super low. So those are the pandemics I'm interested in. But he made some ridiculous comments today, so we'll go ahead and check it out.
Gotta say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
So funny, right?
A lot done. Anyway, but guess what? We got a lot to do. Gotta say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but
for one, I feel like those people are like, sitcoms are just like,
are they even conscious? They seem to be like robots. Why would you laugh at that? No, it's not funny. And
yeah, there's no punchline, there's no joke, there's no setup. Like people, even that, fine, I get it. People are gonna say, Kareem, you make dad jokes all the time. You make references to stupid stuff. I do, yeah, and you post memes. So like, I'm the king of making bad jokes.
You're pretty good at memes sometimes. Sometimes they're a little corny, if I'm being honest.
I mean, yeah, like I'll be honest. I'm sure there's probably people who see some of my memes and they're like, I don't want to hang out with this guy. Although I will say this, in the last office space I worked at, I had one guy who was a new software engineer, came down to me and said, I think you have the funniest memes I've seen. So that was nice. That being said, yeah, I post some stupid memes. I make some stupid jokes, but at least there's a setup. There's a reference. There's kind of a thing that hints to a thing. You know what I mean? It's not just random. I was this. Like, there's no setup. There was no punchline. There was no kind of like story behind it. Like, I've watched a lot of stand-up comedy. I've watched George Carlin when I probably wasn't supposed to. At least jokes have some kind of preface. This is just creepy for one. Now, it could be he's just brain dead and saying stuff, but we know about the diary. We know about the showers. We know about Ashley Biden. We know
about Pedo Peter.
Yeah, Pedo Peter. So, and someone could say, oh, yeah, like Ian was saying, oh, maybe she helped later in life. I'm like, then why are you referencing that? Why wouldn't you say, oh, I was 45 and she was 20?
That doesn't make any sense. Listen, to be honest, it might be the case that he's just cognitively not there, and he might not even be meaning what we think he means. It's possible that he's just doesn't even know what planet he's on, and he's just saying stuff, and he doesn't even understand what he's saying, and maybe he doesn't even know the girl. Who knows? He's so cognitively impaired. He's so psychologically demented. He's so out of the picture. Whatever words or framing or verbiage you want to use, he's not there and he's not present. So regardless, whether it be a true statement of fact that came out through a Freudian slip, or whether it be something that's not even true and was just garbled nonsense, regardless, that's the president of the United States in the president during arguably one of the most, pivotal times in like a geopolitical stance and in a economical stance in the country. I mean, economically right now, we're in pretty much a 70s period, and geopolitically, we're in a 30s, 40s, post World War I, pre World War II era right now, where we're in a very similar period when you look at World War II and you look at 10, 12 years before that. And you look at the economic problems and the economic instability and the depression and famines at that same time, that all obviously was before World War II and preceded World War II. So I think we're in that period right now. And FDR, love him, hate him, don't mind, whatever. Listen, at least he could give a speech. At least people respected him, and at least that he was tough enough to make it look as like FDR had Parkinson's disease. No, polio. He had polio, and he hid it somehow, some way. He hid it. Now, granted, there wasn't as many cameras back then. TV wasn't the same, but he hid the fact that he had polio for almost his entire 3 or 4 terms, something ridiculous, in office, and he did it because he didn't want to look weak. But when we look at Biden, there is no hiding the weakness, the fecklessness, the dementia. He's weak, but not only is he weak, he's mentally disturbed. And I really genuinely wonder what goes on in the minds of the leaders of our adversaries. Like, I'm genuinely curious. What do you think Xi Jinping thinks? Do you think they're just like, oh my God, what do you think they're thinking? Because, I mean, listen, laugh. I get it. It's funny. It's Joe Biden. He's a joke, but he is the president of the arguably one of the freest, not arguably the wealthiest countries that's ever existed.
Fine. 2 things. I think it's funny. If we go to a lot of conspiracy theorists, or truthers as I like to call them, and I consider myself one, they sat down, even if he was competent, they sat down with Alex Jones and asked, like, what is the president really able? He's like, you can do some stuff. You can sign some bills and you can do some stuff. It's not like you have no influence on anything ever. That's not exactly true. But there's a lot of stuff you don't control. If I'm being honest, Washington's controlled by bureaucrats, special interests, and intelligence communities. And it has been to me ever since the demise of JFK. And even before that, in some respects, things like the Federal Reserve and other stuff. That being said, well, I think China and America have technically take orders from the same organizations, if I'm being honest. Xi Jinping kind of laughs at this, but to me, if I'm being honest, your real president is the people in the World Economic Forum putting out all these opinion pieces, which ironically end up in law. Ironically, they end up as bills. And it's not just me like, oh, Kareem, you're just an example. Oh, World Economic Forum, we'd like to phase out public car ownership or not public, private car ownership. All of a sudden, Gavin Newsom writes a bill banning it by what, 2030, 2035?
2035, yeah.
2035. Huh, that's just weird. Oh, they want a great reset. Oh, okay, we're just printing a bunch of money. Oh, okay, they want to do stuff with the climate. Now I'm seeing a lot, they literally, here's an example that's right in your face. The Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't,
oh my God,
doesn't combat inflation, doesn't reduce it. As we know, it's the typical Washington special. Write a bill that says you're going to fight something that does the opposite, like the Patriot Act. So the World Economic Forum said, push the Inflation Reduction Act. They were they said it right on their video. They're like, we need to get this through. We need to get this done. Pushes it through. And I think Jeremy, he talked a little bit about the CBDC. We can argue to the extent of what that will work or what that won't work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go crazy with that. But the World Economic Forum wants to do this. Washington pushes it through. It doesn't seem to me like the president or Congress is really in control. Seems like there's a lot of big business interests, globalist interests, and lobbying interests that are pushing them in the direction they want to go. I mean, heck, even Joe Manchin, people are like, oh, I love Joe Manchin. He saved the day. He's being lobbied by Bill Gates.
And he's still a Democrat, and he still gets money from Pfizer. So it's like
he still gets money
what,
from Pfizer.
You like Joe Manchin what? Because he voted somewhat good on a few bills like that. If that's the standard by which we judge our politicians, we're seriously screwed.
Yeah.
Because like, look, this is a good point. This is what you're bringing up is, I think, a very fair, honest critique of the right. Is that if you look at the right and the way they act, because they're so ruthlessly and rigorously attacked by the left, and they're attacked using all of the not only the apparatus of the media, but all of the institutions in this country, from Congress, from the House, from the Senate, from the university, from all the media companies, MSN, CNBC, CNN, all of them, since they're attacked so much. When someone on the left, right, middle, wherever they lie, comes out in support of a certain issue or certain topic, and it just so happens that on that certain topic or issue, they take the topic that the right is for, right? If someone just comes out and decides to say, oh, I'm actually pro-life, right? The right is just so naive and so headstrong and just adopting whoever that person is. Like, even if on every other issue they're wrong, even if economically they're wrong, even if on any other political issue they're wrong, but because they are in alignment on one specific issue with the general broader right, then they accept them and they're welcoming because of how rigorously and viciously they're attacked by the left. Perfect example of this is what's her name there, Kim Kardashian's mother. She was running for governor in California. I'm drawing a blank. Caitlyn Jenner, right? How they like accepted her, like, oh, we really would like Caitlyn Jenner because she was like a certain way on the trans issue, but on a lot of issues, she was like still big government. She was still spending. It wasn't like she was a conservative, from a budget standpoint, from a physical standpoint, but because she was a certain way on the broader topic of the transgender phenomenon, and she was against the surgeries for minors, they just took her in with open arms. But on every other issue, she was a failure.
Yeah, you can even argue that other conservatives like Neom or Ron DeSantis, they're supposedly like amazing on conservative heroes, but you look at kind of what they do in other domains and they're not that great. In fact, they're probably as bad as some of the neoconservatives before them, or the rhinos that they like to yell at. And there was the same thing with Dan Crenshaw, the rest of them. Like, fine, Marsha Blackburn might be good in this one ruling in Tennessee where they're banning surgeries for minors, but that doesn't mean, but I'm in no way a Marsha Blackburn fan. In fact,
did she vote on the CARES Act? Yes, she did vote on the CARES Act. Well, then is she part of the problem of inflation? Yes.
Yeah. I'd still say she's an old guard. I guess what they call them, old guard rhinos, all that stuff. Yeah, she gets something right on the trans issue, but then she's bad on everything else. So I'd still say, hey, vote out Marsha Blackburn and keep the thing that they're doing in Tennessee, which we can talk about. But want to point my attention to, since I brought up Joe Manchin, his buddy, the guy who's really in charge, because I'd rather talk about the real president, because let's face it, whatever Xi Jinping thinks and whatever Joe Biden thinks, they're both taking orders from Klaus Schwab, in my opinion. If I'm being honest, Klaus Schwab's still your president, so don't worry.
But he's actually more powerful than your president. Because he doesn't ever have to be elected. He doesn't have to ever worry about being elected or unelected. He doesn't ever have to worry about, the media coming after him. He's essentially a god. He's essentially a figurehead in the heavenly bodies, overwatching all of these Western societies, basically moving pawns where he wants them to go to get the outcomes he wants. And he's doing so, I mean, for the most part, without scrutiny and without attack and without coverage from the media. So he's really gotten away with a lot, and it's thanks to, I think, the disgusting, vitriolic, despotic media that we have. If we had an honest, fair media that cared about the truth and cared about stories and how big certain stories are, I mean, Klaus Schwab would be at the top of the list. The things that he's doing, the money that he's putting into certain governments and into certain political campaigns. I mean, how many times have you turned on CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox News and seen them talk about something called ESG scores? How many times have you turned them on and seen ESG? Never. They never talk about these things.
But I don't turn them on, so
that's true.
And I actually tell people to, if you don't have a video game system, turn off your TV. What are you doing it for? It's programming. Like, fine, there's some good stuff on HBO, like The Anarchist, but whatever. But what I would say definitively is that the way that this operates is, most of the big changes in your life are made by unelected officials who use elected officials kind of as a spokesperson.
That's
basically
true.
Basically all they're doing a macrocosm. What I do is, like, you have a crypto idea, you come get me as a spokesperson. I'll look at it and say, okay, I think this is viable, or no, this is dumb. But if I think it's a good idea, then I'll be your spokesperson for it. Now, I'm not necessarily totally invested in it, but I'm getting a little bit of money, or I like what I'm doing, so hey, I'm helping out. Now that depends on my interest and everything, how far I'll go, but that's what essentially they're doing. They're getting these spokespeople in public, places, and then they're funding what they do, and telling them how to vote. And that's really how it goes. It's controlled by, I guess, you would call it the hidden hand and stuff.
Yeah, it's ventriloquism at its best. We all know that what's that famous ventriloquist, a comedian guy, Jeff Dunham, when Jeff Dunham's on the stage, we know that the animals aren't actually animals. We know there's a hand behind those animals actually making the sound, actually doing the thinking, actually coming up with the bits. That's what these politicians are. Are they talking? Yes. Are they making noise? Yes. Are they exciting and entertaining? Very much entertaining. But who's really, really pulling the strings? And typically, it tends to be these global organizations.
Yep. Global organizations, unfortunately, are deciding a lot of our fates unless we...
All right, let's get to the corn now.
Huh?
I said, let's get to the corn now, because I see something about corn.
Yes, let's get to corn with good old Bill Gates. So Bill Gates wants to force everybody to live off his patent-pending synthetic corn. Just sounds great, because he's done such a good job with meat. Beyond Meat, the CEO, is a hungry guy.
Yeah, their business is going bankrupt.
Yeah, it's just, when I first saw that, I'm like, synthetic meat, I'm like, what is this? They're like, we'll grow it in the lab. I'm like, that sounds horrible. I'd rather go vegan than do that. And then Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat. I don't know what's going on with the Impossible Meat. I've never tried it, never will, no interest. But Billy Boy is doing all this weird stuff. Given that the scary beer flu mania is becoming increasingly unpopular with the public, and the global class has decided to rebrand the relentless campaign for technocratic tyranny, which is what I'd actually call them. A lot of people call them fascist communists. They're more technocrats. They want to use technology, which I don't hate technology in and of itself most of the time, except AI sometimes. But they want to use technology to enslave you and regulate every aspect of your life possible. Bill Gates, for his part, is transitioning from the scary beer flu thing that he wants to a monopolistic synthetic corn salesman. Once again, he's using the continent of Africa as his patient zero for his maniacal experiments. Dude's like Dr. Evil. At his annual Goalkeepers conference in New York City this week, Gates featured his lab-made corn product as a solution to hunger in Africa. Hasn't Africa suffered enough? The Microsoft founder, which he named after a certain reproductive organ, is deeply embedded in a climate hoax movement and has reoriented most of his philanthropic endeavors behind trying to change Earth's temperature, because global warming is real, apparently. At Goalkeepers, Gates touted his GMO corn as a critical solution to climate change in Africa, which is, to me, their main obsession. If this confuses you, it means that he doesn't want African farmers to invest in and consume nutrient-rich livestock, which would actually improve their lives, because Gates believes that cows, chickens, and such are contributing to climate change.
Oh.
Therefore, Bill Gates has decided that Africans must subscribe to a lifetime of "you will eat corn, you will be happy." Ask me about corn.
Is that a real picture?
Yeah.
It is?
I
For
think
me,
so.
I really like corn.
What do you like about corn?
It's corn. A big golden mouse in half the juice. I got money, a more beautiful thing. It's corn. I can tell you all about it. I mean, look at this thing. From the time that I don't anything change. It's corn.
Okay.
We are so fucked.
Well,
We're
I don't
done,
know.
dude.
If
We might as well
ride-
just end it because it's over, dude. These technocrats, if they can just do this and get away with this, I mean, oh my God, it's just so blatant what they're doing.
at
It's
least
so
people
open
are
what they're
waking up.
doing. It's like there's a massive continent that has an immense amount of land that could be used for crops and farming for the next 5 centuries. Unlike our land, we've destroyed a lot of our cropland in the last 300 years, but Africa has a lot of land for farming. Now, is the agriculture going to be exactly the same as ours? No, it's going to be different, but they have a lot of fertile land for different crops. And they have all this land, and some ex-software engineer who never even graduated college is coming up with synthetic corn to give to this country that has all this land and all these crops with future potential so they all, to quote unquote, help the country when they have all this land. But then how is it not obvious that he's the one that's going to be profiting? Like, it's so blatant. It's so obvious that it's insane. It's like, yes, he's making synthetic corn and synthetic beef because he owns a shit ton of farmland. And if he owns the farmland and he owns the patents on the beef and he owns the manufacturers of the beef, he's going to make money left and right. Because if he owns the crops, once you get that corn that's going to be made, it's genetically modified. You still need to grow it, but it's going to be genetically modified corn. And then he owns the land. And then once you get rid of beef because of its effect on climate change, you're going to have to minimize, beef consumption. Well, then he owns the patents on the synthetic beef, and then he owns the labs and the factories to make the beef. So it's like at every single step, Bill Gates has some stake in these I don't even know what you would call these endeavors. He has some sort of stake in it. All the things he's pushing, everything he's pushing, he has a profit stake in every single thing.
Yep. And even recently I was looking at Anomaly, and there's some stuff about Operation Warp Speed where he told Deep State Dawn, hey, don't look into anything that's going on.
Yeah, he told that. He said that.
And even Trump said, oh, Bill Gates, I'm going to offer you a position. I don't think he took it, though. But really, to me, what a lot of these people are doing, but I kind of follow this as the bigger picture. You could say, oh, Bill Gates just wants to push corn. Well, didn't they say they wanted to eat less meat? So, I think.
And isn't he the same guy that said that with medical, if medical procedures and medicine and vaccines stay good, that the population would go down by 15%, referring to a certain number?
Yeah. So
wasn't this that same guy?
Yep, same dude, and he did that right in a TED Talk. Said it specific procedures would have outcomes and sustainability. I'm going to skip over this. Corn does have very little nutritional value to me. It's not that great of a thing to eat. Not that I'm saying never eat corn. I eat corn. But Gates plans a real diabolical turn when you learn Gates and his foundation have spent the last several years buying up farmland, securing hundreds of patents for seeds and all kind of lab-made food products.
And he owns the seeds. Jesus. This guy owns everything, dude. He owns the land that the crops are going to be put on. Yeah. He owns the seeds for the crops. Oh my God. I mean,
it's like George Carlin said in Life is Worth Losing. If you look back at that, they own all the important land. They own everything. Like they literally, like, but they just keep buying up this stuff.
Yeah.
As
That's
Marty
crazy.
Bent says, the Davos class is gearing up for one of the most egregious and shameless land grabs in human history. And if more people don't begin speaking out against their nefarious plans, they'll likely get what they want: full control over you. You can see this is a pretty good illustration of what's going on. Here's some details. Gates' mission from U.S. Right to Know, a healthcare investigation research nonprofit. Gates says rich countries should shift entirely to synthetic beef, and he has the intellectual property rights to sell them as a food that can help fix climate. Gates touts the Impossible Burger, a plant-based patty made from genetically engineered soy and textured with engineered yeast. That sounds horrible. Its manufacturer, the Gates-funded Impossible Foods, has 24 patents and more than 100 patents pending to artificially replicate cheese, beef, and chicken and premiate these products with manufactured flavors, scents, and textures. Also, he's leveraged as well successfully to monopolize the scary beer flu, causing a lot of issues. Now he seeks to do the same thing in the agricultural space, to force humanity to consume his patented foods in order to save the planet. So, the late Jeffrey Epstein's close friend has invested billions of dollars in Africa through his nonprofit. Since retiring from the tech world, Bill Gates dedicated much of his time and energy to the continent, destroying the continent, I should add. However, regardless of his true motives, virtual everything that Gates works on turns into poison. I don't think that's by accident. Africans have suffered greatly because of him and his campaign to course a synthetic corn-based standard of living that will continue that theme. So
I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not saying that they should, but I wouldn't be surprised if the
They were
Africans
out.
try and put a hit out on him because
good.
I
India
mean,
did. India
yeah,
did.
I know
India's-
countries have banned him from their foundation operating in certain countries. Different countries have said, nope, your foundation cannot operate in this locality because of what your foundation has done to the people. I mean, why okay, put it like this. Why do you think it would be that an ex-software engineer, right, billionaire, business mogul, retires, and then all of a sudden becomes a philanthropist obsessed with helping Africa and spends the last decade plus in Africa, quote unquote, helping it? Yet he has done nothing to actually help it. It's like, what do you think he's doing? Why is this ex-software engineer so obsessed with going into Africa and helping the people? Like, I get it. I'm not saying that it's not like a noble deed to go and help people, but it's just a peculiar thing. It's like me, it's like anyone. I don't know. It's like if what's his name there? Steve Jobs decided to quit Apple and then just started, putting all his money into a foreign country. And it's like, what's your interest there? You're worried about technology. You're worried about computer programming. Why are you in this country? You're dealing with vaccines. You're dealing with medicine. You're dealing with corn. You don't know anything about that, Steve. You know about computers. You know about product launches. You know about marketing, but you don't know anything about food. You don't know anything about medicines, vaccines, and the medical procedures. But Bill Gates just does it and gets away with it. Like no one blinks an eye. But when you really look at it, it's insane. It's outright insane that this guy goes from software engineer to vaccine maker to farm landowner to laboratory, financier to health connoisseur. And mind you, this is one of the unhealthiest guys just physically that you could probably ever find in the population now. They're 400, 500-pound people, yes, but he's pretty unhealthy. He's got a pretty big gut. And he's pretty unhealthy. So it's just so insane.
Actually annoys me. All these billionaires annoy me for one reason. Because I see Elon Musk on a yacht and Jeff Bezos, and then this guy who's the worst. Dude,
at least Jeff is in decent shape. I'll give him that.
By whose standard? Not mine. Like decent shape to me is like, if I had to quantify it, 10 to 12% body fat. So other than like Dr. Saladino and Huberman, but those guys actually focus on health. But like, if I was a billionaire, I'd be like calling them up, like, all right, give me a diet plan, like Butcher Box. Like, I'd be just getting straight up like the best steak every day, getting like filtered water, and I'd be Jack Tillamate. I'd be like 80-year-old, Viking warrior. Like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, I'm a billionaire. I can be jacked.
They definitely all have the money to do that.
Yeah. That'd be the first thing I'd do. Health is the most important thing. You can't do anything without health. So if I was a billionaire, I'd just get jacked. Just saying. Not telling the bourgeoisie what to do, but they're dumb. Anyway, let's focus on some foreign policy. Occupied parts of Ukraine. I get it. It's from CNN. It could be propaganda, but I know this is actually going on. I think this is interesting. It was shared in the We Are Change and G3 News. So I'm going to consider this okay. I don't care about news guards so much. I actually care if people in like Luke's circle are looking at it and G3 is looking at it and the Colbert Report's looking at it. That's how I gauge things. Is that a good way to gauge it? It's biased, but it's a way. Occupied parts of Ukraine vote on joining Russia in sham referendums. So I get it, CNN. I hate CNN. I'll just put that. But I think this came from a source that the article, not itself, but the article where I found it, the origins of where I found the article is a good source, if that makes any sense. For Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine are voting in referendums on joining Russia, according to separatist leaders, in a move that raises the stakes of Moscow's invasion 7 months after the fighting began. Referendums, which are illegal under international law, are dismissed by a sham by Western governments, and Kyiv could pave the way for Russia's annexation of the areas, allowing Moscow to frame the ongoing Ukrainian counteroffensive as an attack on Russia itself. Such a move could provide Moscow with a pretext to escalating its faltering war, which has seen Kyiv regain thousands of square miles of territory this month. Addressing Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin raised the specter of nuclear weapons in his address, saying he would use all means at our disposal if he deemed the territorial integrity of Russia to be jeopardized. The votes, which are expected to take place over 5 days, were called pro-Russian officials in self-declared republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, and Russian-held parts of Kherson, and, I can't pronounce that word, in the south, Zaporizhzhia, Ziza, with questions on the ballot varying slightly depending on the region. Together, the 4 regions make up 18% of Ukraine's territory. So that might not sound like a lot, but I'm sure that's a lot in terms of landmass. The plans, which are being held under military occupation, are effectively carried out at gunpoint. I've been strongly condemned both by the government of Ukraine and its Western allies. The outcome of sham secession referendums is almost certainly decided. The UK ambassador to Ukraine, Melinda Simmons, on Twitter Friday said there will be results publicized of something that didn't happen. I wonder whether anyone will ever be called to a vote. You can say the long-awaited referendum has started, which is designed to restore the fair course of things in our land, to return peace to our homes, to consolidate the status of Donbass as part of our historical motherland, Russia. Vladimir Boka, the head of the People's Council and self-declared Donetsk People Republic, said in a propaganda statement on Telegram. So this is very, very, very long. I'm not going to get into the whole thing of it. But what I think is interesting is it's not exactly how the Western media portrays, is that there are some territories that are sympathetic to Russia. Now, I'd also tell the right, look, I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin. I never was. I'm not a fan of any statist or any leader, other than the one that I brought up at the beginning of this broadcast, and Dr. Ron Paul, pretty much. I like Spike Cohen, but most leaders in outside of the U.S. who are not libertarians, I don't want anything to do with. And he's still a statist. He put Brittany Griner in for smoking pot. There's no way this guy is probably going to let you criticize him on state media, I would imagine, in Russia, from what I've been told. Like, if you criticize the war, you get in trouble. So this guy, is he fighting some bad interests? Yes. But is he also authoritarian? Yes. I think it's interesting to see that there's a referendum going on now, though, that some parts of Ukraine are sympathetic to Russia. Maybe this will help with the conflict, but there's still the issue that it keeps escalating. And I don't necessarily see a good way that this is going to end, because the people in charge just keep wanting to draw this out as much as possible. But it's interesting to see that some people are not taking the bait.
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to say on that is that I don't know what's true and what's not true. I just want to be very clear in saying that, because there was something similar that happened with Crimea. And depending on who you ask, it was an annexation, and depending on other people you ask, it was they voted for it, and they did technically vote for it. There was, whether you want to accept the votes, but there was a referendum, there was a vote to give Crimea to Russia, and they voted to that. Now, that's if you believe the credibility of those elections. And the same thing is true here. It's like some people say that these regions, generally speaking, are more sympathetic to Russia, and that they very well could decide to be a part of Russia. Now, it just depends on how you look at it, because here's what I think about the Ukraine and Russia thing. The elections can and will not be credible. And what that means is that even if they were conducted in such a manner that they would be up to the standards of a Great Britain, United States, UK election, even if they were up to the Western democracy standards, they still would not be accepted because of the level of propaganda and of the level of pressure that's being put on the West to defend Ukraine. So what I'm saying is that even if the results were valid, the media, the Western media, would not accept them. So
No.
I don't think there's a way for the election to be accepted regardless in the eyes of the
No.
media. Okay, they've already made their choice. They've already decided that they're not fair. They've already decided that the referendum is garbage and that it's nonsense. That was their choice. So you have to say, is the media right? Is this same organization that lied about WMDs? Is this the same organization that has lied and smeared people like Alex Jones and people like the Project Veritas guy James O'Keefe and many others? Is this the same organization we're talking about here that said Joe Rogan was using a dangerous horse dewormer medicine to cure COVID? Right? Are we going to trust those organizations with their views and opinions on what's going on in Russia? Me personally, I use them as sources because that way, if the left tries to attack me, they can't say I'm using some right-wing conspiracy patriot news source, right? That way I'm dotting my I's across my T's. I'm doing it because there's the only way you're going to be able to deny the stories and the evidence that I'm covering and bringing to you is if you just flat out say they're wrong. And CNN, bad, good. Most people, the average individual, accepts it as being credible. You could like that, you could not like it. Now we distrust them, but most people accept CNN as a credible source, meaning that they have some degree of credibility because of the length of time they've been involved in news and journalism and whatnot. But with this whole Ukraine-Russia thing, there's so much propaganda and what Yuri Bezmenov would call demoralization and manipulation of information. I don't know what to believe. So it could be the case that this area does want to be a part of Russia, and they do have these elections, whether they're quasi-elections, compared to, democracy elections in the West, but maybe they do want to be a part of Russia. I don't know. And I really don't know how I can know that for sure, other than just blindly believing the New York Times and CNN. And I think we know where their narrative lies.
Yeah, I think the Western media narrative, this is the problem I have. There's two sides pulling, and then there's, to me, people in the middle. It's not exactly like a good guy, bad guy thing. There's two sides with different interests. NATO has its interests. Russia has its interests. Zelensky has their interests, whatever his government's called. The Kremlin has their interests. And to me, there's not necessarily like benign actors. There's not like an actor that's just like, hey, we're the good guys. It's not as cut and dry as I think most people want to believe. That being said, the problem is I was talking to, because I have friends in Russia, I have friends, and he is upping conscriptions. One thing I didn't say from your show, the past show, is I want to say to Scott Horton, he's right about hotter than the sun. We really do need to abolish these nuclear weapons so people can't threaten to use them anymore. I don't know exactly how, but that part I would agree with. Also, I do want to say, for all the people who said, oh, Korea, you want Pennsylvania to secede, well, Iran will show up. Well, China will show up. Venezuela will just pop up. Cuba will pop up. Everybody who's adversarial to anything the United States has done will all of a sudden say that once the state seceded and pop up. I'd say two things to that. One, yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. Two, even if they do, I think a decentralized militia could still take them. So I'm just kind of throwing that in their face because people are like, oh my God, if you secede, there'll be a nuclear war. I'm like, I think the nuclear war is being caused by your central institutions that can't seem to behave themselves because all they want to do is enrich people who are defense contractors and people who are, part of this global cabal who, in my opinion, it's not just defense contractors. I think at the top of it, you'll find people who do have crazy religions who probably want to use this as sacrifices. And I know that sounds crazy. That's fine. I've been in the truther space for a while. There's a lot of stuff people don't want to see that, hey, sometimes they can't really fathom like, oh, these people would do this. But these defense contractors have a lot of money. So there's probably more motivation than that. And a lot of these elites seem to love war. And here's the problem with this too. I'm kind of leading the story one into another because NATO is prolonging the Ukrainian proxy war and global havoc. With diplomacy thwarted, the U.S. and its allies, which we shouldn't have any. If you read George Washington's speech, that's actually what got me when the Queen died. They're like, Britain's our ally. I'm like, I wish they weren't. Plan for open-ended military and economic warfare against Russia, despite acknowledging the most dangerous moments are yet to come. Russia has announced the plan to mobilize an additional 300,000 troops for war in Ukraine. And he is drafting people like Adam Kinzinger, who's a complete rhino POS, not point of sale moron. I feel the guy probably saves money on cleaning his windows by licking them instead of using Windex. Said, oh, in America and Vietnam, you got lucky. It's a lottery when you get drafted. Oh, everybody in Russia gets drafted. I guess we're winning the culture war. I'm like, this guy. This is what drives me to just say push the button. I'm sorry, Lisa, and I'm just pushing the button. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, and we go, we lose a lot of social welfare. But I got that. In his speech unveiling the expanded war effort, Vladimir Putin vowed to achieve his main goal of liberation of Donbass and issued a thinly veiled nuclear threat in the process. Yeah, thinly veiled I like how they just, he was just hanging out and said, bruh.
Yeah, just talking about how he would use nuclear weapons if the integrity of Russia was being attacked. In a lot of ways, most people would define the Ukraine thing as the integrity of Russia being attacked. So yeah, just nonchalantly threatening to use mass nuclear weapons.
What did he add? You
I don't know about that. That seems, for one, that's opinion. That's opinion right there. That's not a fact statement.
They're doing two, fact checker language, this is we checked it, but based on our opinion of this fact, this is what we. And what does a thinly veiled threat of nuclear war mean? Did he add you on WhatsApp and be like, hey, bro, there's nothing on Netflix. What do you think about another Hiroshima?
I'd say any threat about nuclear weapons isn't thin, especially from someone who has them behind them, especially from a leader who can use them at any time. And if there's any leader in this world who actually has the ability and the sort of wherewithal to use nuclear weapons, it's Russia and it's Vladimir Putin amongst all the other leaders. He has control over that government.
Well, yeah, he's control over that government. He has the most nukes. And to me, he is probably one of the, granted, we can discuss statism and I'm not a fan. We can discuss different, but people who I think are bluffing, a lot of people said Trump's this, tough guy and thing. I really don't think so. I really think people like Xi Jinping and him, if they tell you they're going to do something violent, they're probably going to do something violent. These people are not reading human rights books. They're not sitting down, in my opinion, and reading necessarily, although Solzhenitsyn, he probably did read, but they're not necessarily reading like any moral philosophies and stuff. They're not sitting there and saying, man, what does Rothbard's axiom of action say? Maybe this is a bad idea. So, yeah, that to me is the most ridiculous thing I saw there. Move comes days ahead of planned referendums in breakaway Ukrainian areas to formalize Russia annexation, and Russian escalation ensures that the fighting is entering an even more dangerous phase. Yeah, because NATO keeps pushing it. Russia bears legal and moral responsibility for its invasion. Recent developments underscore that NATO leaders have shunned opportunities to prevent further catastrophe and instead choose to fuel it, which is 100% too. To me, it's kind of like this. A lot of these conflicts are like NATO goes and the CIA and all their go and cause a problem. They go hit a dog with a newspaper and they beat the dog and kick the dog. Then the dog gets mad. The dog bites someone. They're like, look, the dog's biting someone. Let's get involved. Let's, help the person against it. But then at the same time, they just keep hitting the dog with the head. And they're like, the dog's getting more violent. And then they're fighting back. And they just keep putting fuel on the fire. I'm like, stop. It's annoying. Putin's announcement comes just after the Ukrainian military's routing of Russian forces from Kharkiv, which relied extensively on U.S. planning, weaponry, and intelligence, sparked triumphant declarations that the tide has turned. According to Atlantic's Anne Applebaum, Americans and Europeans need to prepare for a Ukrainian victory, one so overwhelming that may well bring about the end of Putin's regime. I think that's also BS too. Like, granted, there's nothing good to really that I have to say about that either, but I don't think it. I think what'll happen is they'll be prolonged, and eventually this end in a stalemate. And people say, "Why did we do this?" Certainly, it's not a military setback for Russia. Official Kharkiv said to retreat to Washington Post. I don't know if I could call it a major strategic loss. Whether or not it's a major strategic loss for Russia, the battle in Kharkiv is already a major victory for NATO leaders seeking to prolong their proxy war in Ukraine and economic warfare next door. The U.S. rejection of diplomacy around Ukraine has newly been substantiated by the White House Russia expert Fiona Hill, citing multiple former U.S. officials. Hill reports in April of this year, Russia and Ukrainian negotiators appear to have tentatively agreed on the outlines of a negotiated interim settlement. Under the framework, Russia would withdraw its pre-invasion position, while Ukraine would pledge not to join NATO and instead receive security guarantees from other countries. I think we could even do more than, I think there could be something else put in there, but in confirming U.S. officials are aware of this tentative statement, Hill bolsters previous news that Washington's junior partner London was enlisted to thwart it. The Ukrainian media reported, citing sources close to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, UK Prime Minister Johnson traveled to Kyiv and relayed the message that Russia should be pressured, not negotiated with. And that's the problem. All of these Western quote-unquote leaders, which to me, if you want to, I don't know if you want to consider them leaders, to me, they're walking puppets of the WEF. Please tell me what to do, Mr. Schwab. You do this. Okay. And it's on the left and the right. A lot of these people are just taking orders. For the most part, I'm not saying they don't have free will, but I'm saying it is severely limited. It's kind of like me putting you in a monopoly game and then owning all the businesses and saying you can move, but I'm going to tell you where to move, where to use your money, and what to do and how to speak. But you can still move. That's how I look at it. In a speech to expand the war effort, Putin invoked in this episode after the invasion began. He said Ukrainian officials reacted very positively to our proposals. After certain compromises were reached, Kyiv was actually given a direct order to disrupt all agreements. Having undermined the prospect of a negotiated peace in the war's early weeks, proxy warriors in Washington are openly celebrating their success. Hey, look, it's a piece of shit rhino. Senator Lindsey Graham recently declared, as long as we help Ukraine with weapons they need and economic support, they will fight to the last person. And I'm not going to go through the rest of it, but that's essentially what they want. To me, Washington, NATO, which to me, the majority of NATO is America, at least from my perspective. And I'm not a military personnel, but maybe Harrison can clarify that. But what they want to do is just prolong this war so that everybody keeps fighting. Ukraine will be basically destroyed and, like look like Afghanistan. It'll be, even though Luke called it the Afghanistan, really will be that or worse. Russia will be significantly weakened, and Washington just going to keep pushing this. I don't think there's really a good side in this. I just see a lot of people getting screwed. And what I would like to see is, yes, us leave NATO, NATO get out of the way. Then if someone like Scotland or someone's there or someone who's reasonable, try and broker a peace deal, and let's stop getting involved in other countries. And furthermore, I don't think we should have allies, and I don't think we should have an organized military like we have. We should have a militia that is necessary to keep the peace of the Confederacy, the Union, or just decentralized cities.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So how do you think it will end? Do you think this will end in a stalemate situation, a sort of Vietnam-like situation, a sort of maybe Afghanistan-like situation?
That would be my guess. This is probably going to have a Afghanistan, because to me, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I don't know who said that, but to me, like that necessarily, like, and I get that it's not always repetitive in the sense that, oh, it's going to, as a linear fashion, but this does appear to me like it's going to be something that is going to be like Afghanistan or something like Vietnam, and they're going to draw it out a long time, because that's what keeps the war that's what feeds the beast, which is the military-industrial complex.
Mark Twain said that. I was pretty sure he said that, but I wasn't quite sure. But yeah, Mark Twain.
Yeah, Mark Twain said that. Great writer, great American author. And I think they're just going to keep drawing this out until they're either, if there's a stalemate, they can't pushing. But I just see this as a very long, unfortunate stalemate, and it's going to hurt the people of Russia. It's going to hurt the people of America. It's going to hurt the people of Ukraine. And no one's going to come out on top, and this is just going to cause more devastation. It's also going to really hurt a lot of European countries because of energy crisis. And what's funny enough, who said the climate crisis is right around the corner? Oh, hey, who said that? And then, just funny enough, there's an energy crisis, and then Putin's in. It seems so convenient to what they want to do. So that's what I think is going to happen. And there's no good players, by the way. The European Union screwed themselves on energy, which is stupid.
Yeah, that's what happens when you outsource all your energy to a authoritarian country. You get screwed. It's like, really? You think they decided to put themselves on a moral high ground and decide that they were too good to produce fossil fuels, so they gave over 45% of their energy production to Russia. And they are feeling the effects of that by energy and electricity going up 300, 400, 500, 600%. Italy as well.
Ridiculous. And
that's what they did. They made that choice, though. That was what they did. Yeah,
well, Greta Thunberg apparently inspired. But here's what I'd say. Even if there was another Ancapistan town, I wouldn't outsource energy production from Ancapistan 1 to and I'm like, no, bro.
Build your own.
Huh?
I said build your own. You know, why take from another and make yourself weak when you can maintain one and then build another?
Yeah, I'll be like, look, listen. They're like, we want energy. I'm like, okay, what cryptos you got? We got Solana. Fine. Give me 500 Solana. I'll send you over these Tesla plans. I'll show you how to build. I'll send a dude down to build Tesla coils for like, I don't know, 0.5, like 1 Ethereum an hour. I don't like Ethereum. One BTC an hour.
Yeah.
That's 20 grand. That's probably ridiculous, but 0.5 BTC an hour. 10 grand an hour. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. If you had stable money, that's probably not insane. But I know I sound like a crazy person, but Pennsylvania has a lot of oil reserves. We could tap into that, clear our debt, and sell that to Europe. But Europe screwed themselves over energy-wise. We're screwing ourselves over financially. We're giving billions to Taiwan, billions to Israel, which we shouldn't. We've been doing that for a while. And we're giving billions to Ukraine. And then Mississippi has a water problem. It's like, dude, don't drink the water. To me, that's dumbfounding me. So we're destroying our financial reserves and our energy reserves. Russia, yes, they did recover by backing the ruble to some things, and they did make, in my opinion, some good strategic economic moves. Not to say that they're good, but the Kremlin's still extremely authoritarian, so they're going to keep drafting people and drafting people and drafting people. And I think I did read somewhere, but I can't confirm it, that young men are being denied the ability to leave. So you're going to have a lot of people who are war-torn, just like they're in Afghanistan now. And you're going to have a lot of war-torn people in Ukraine, and Ukraine is probably going to end up mostly destroyed and in a very, very bad condition, needing to be rebuilt.
Here's a theory.
That's how it could end. It could end better, but that would be my guess, unless we can get something to slow down the beast. But even Justin Amash said a lot of the wars are on autopilot. It's not something most.
Yes, that's what I was getting to. I was like, here's a theory. What if Ukraine is Russia's Afghanistan? And what if it's another situation, except it's not us this time? But Russia basically got themselves in a situation where they're not going to be able to back out of. And there's lots and lots of not only Russian, but Western interests in arms manufacturing, in money going certain places. I mean, we know how these things go. We know how the war machine works. We know how the military industrial complex operates. I think this could be, now the biggest threat obviously is a nuclear weapon, but I think this is Russia's Afghanistan. That's what I think. I could be wrong. And
you're not wrong. Funny enough, this is their second Afghanistan.
That's true. That's true. Literally. Yeah. That's true. But the thing is, though, Putin's okay, listen. Putin's always been a very strong man type leader. Love him, hate him. He's always been a very strong man type leader. He's nearing his end, just as far as his lifespan and as far as his rule over the country. You know, he might want to see himself die the hero, you know, rather than live to see himself become the villain, because I see two or three scenarios. I see the scenario that this is Afghanistan for Russia. They're second, you know, as you pointed out. And this is a war that gets prolonged for maybe 8-9 years, and the funding goes into it. And then eventually they pull out or leave a small amount of troops in Ukraine, but it's not the same level as it is. And then this is circumstance two, Russia continues to expand the military mobilization and send in more and more troops, use more and more bombs, use more and more missiles, and they take Ukraine. They just take it, or the vast majority of the country they just take back. And then circumstance three. Now, circumstance three is an interesting one, because this one's the dangerous one that we don't want. Russia wants to take Ukraine, and they definitely make some legway. They take some areas, but they're not able to take the entire country because of the West funding Ukraine, and Ukraine's able to at least hold on to their last strings and hang on to some areas. And then Russia uses some sort of tactical nuclear weapon, and then World War III. Or this is the last circumstance. Putin gets through death, through like just natural causes, dies, or he gets killed and taken out of power, and it ends. I think that might happen. Like, I think Putin, I don't know exactly why, but I think one of the things about Russia is that it is a very, very vindictive society as it concerns the government and oligarchs there. He could very well be poisoned or killed, and that's the end of it. And I wouldn't be too surprised the way Russia is. And he's seen meeting with his own leaders, his own, officers, and meeting with his own people that he's been with for decades, sitting really far across the room. It's weird. It seems like he doesn't trust anyone around him. So, there could be some sort of coup d'etat, which, if we look at Russia's history, if we look at Stalin, if we look at Lenin, if we look at all these people, that tends to happen. Either they become so much of a tyrant, they get taken out, or they end up, they die, or they just, and I really don't know what's going to happen in Russia, but I see Putin getting taken out of the picture as a possibility, maybe a probability, honestly.
Okay. Do you think that would end the war?
Will they end the war?
No, would that end the war?
I think it would in a way. I don't think it would be like game over. I don't think it would just end it automatically, but I think, listen, the war's not good for the Russian people. Think about this. The
No.
war's not good for the Russian people because A, they're going to have to fight in the war. A, it's going to cost them trillions of dollars, just like it cost us trillions of dollars. It's going to crush their economy, right? It's going to destroy their actual buildings because Ukraine's bombing some areas in Russia, right? So it's going to destroy them physically and economically. So we could see a situation like we've seen so many times in the 20th century where you have a dictator that goes too far and there's a coup d'etat, and then some other powerful tyrant comes along and says, we're going to stop the wars. And this sounds very familiar. You might have heard it. We're going to stop the wars. We're going to get out of Ukraine. And I'm a true democratic leader. And then that person, through just sheer force, like through assassinating Putin or coup d'etat, putting him in office, and then Russia sees a new leader or dictator. But that's usually, Russia isn't one of those countries that just has democratically elected leaders. That's not how it works in Russia, right? When you look at the power change from Lenin to Stalin to Khrushchev to Gorbachev, it's not like it is in the West where you have this, stable every 4 to 8 years there's a new president. No, Stalin might just die, and some people theorize that he was killed. But
really, all that. First of all, I hate democracy. Second of all, you know what's funny? You said something, and I wanted to make a point, and I forgot it. You're talking about like, oh, we complain about like elections, like this election, that election, or overthrow this government. Well, Russia invade. You know who's really tampering our elections? The WEF. Literally.
I know, but no one cares about them. The reason why no one cares about them
because they own the media.
They own the media. Bill Gates has bought them off completely. So
it's like, hey,
hush, hush.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone.
I mean, there's just a guy with billions of dollars who has presidents come and he says he penetrates the cabinets. He's not interfering in elections. Jeez. That would make me some kind of truther to believe that. What I believe the problem is all these interests are pushing it. So if you swap leaders, it could change. We'll have to see. I don't know. I think if that does happen, by the way, I want to be clear. I think Putin is by far not the worst leader Russia has had in the last 100 years. You might even in many ways classify him as one of the best. Yeah, Jordan Peterson actually said he studied all the leaders up because like Peterson has some weird stuff in his house. Like, old Soviet.
He has a picture of Marx.
Yeah, like old Soviet art. Like, I don't think I'd want to like, hey, here's Mark. Like, get that out of my face. Where's Lysan? Help me. I need Lysan Spooner. Like post Murray Rothbard all over the wall. Like anarchy. It's like, oh, these constitutionalists want to talk to you. Tell them to go away. Yeah, he said he studied a bunch of them, and he said he's not the worst one by far. I think he's like 69 something. So he's not old. So yeah, that's old, but that's not super like.
Yeah, that's a good question. How old is Putin?
Like my dad's in his 60s. He's still going really strong. I have friends and family in their 70s still get up, run, do everything they do, and they take care of themselves. I'd imagine, you can go for another 5-10 years. I gotta say, he doesn't look. All these reports are, oh, he's so sick.
But he has, that's what I've heard, and this is from Lex.
Then I looked at it, and I'm like,
cancer.
come on, like, actually,
you don't think so?
He doesn't look like, just speaking, is he a good guy or bad guy? I think he's a good guy, but he doesn't look to be that bad. Like, just looking. Let me compare him with another president who talked about age ranges recently.
Oh,
well, let me compare him to like another former president who can't form a sentence, who has huge words, or these other. He looks okay. He looks okay to me. I'm not a doctor, but he doesn't look like he's gonna keel over. I don't know.
I don't know. I've heard from multiple people that there's something going on with him, that he's obviously been to the hospital, and I don't know. Like you said, I don't know. He looks better than Joe Biden, but Kareem, we have to remember that that's such a low standard. You could take a retarded monkey, and they would be, oh my God, look at him. He's lively. He's conscious. He's cognitive. It's like we're comparing, Putin to Biden, and obviously Putin is more alive and more cognitively there than Biden. But that's like comparing, like that's like the threshold for liveliness to like a dead person who's like literally on the lifeline, about to the plug's about to be pulled. Like I think he has some sort of ailment. I don't know how severe it is. I do know his face is very puffy. Like if you look at his face in his recent interviews, it's very puffy. And I'm no expert, but certain experts have said that there's certain cancers that can cause that, and stress as well. So I think it's a combination of stress and probably some sort of a cancer, whether it be malignant or what that he's going through. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Where you take a retarded monkey.
No, seriously, like we it's like when we look at any leader in the United States, and in the world, any leader, and put him up to Joe Biden, I'm sure he'll probably look like a Ronald Reagan or a John F. Kennedy, like compared to Biden. And I mean it. Find one leader, one nation state leader in the world who is as cognitively not there as Joe Biden, and I'll give you a cookie and probably $1, because they don't exist. Biden is the most cognitively impaired president we've ever had. It's not even close. He's way more cognitively impaired than Ronald Reagan. And in the 90s, they said that Reagan was one of the most cognitively impaired presidents we had and hit it. Now, so I mean, it's so clear that he's cognitively impaired. He can't even spew together one cohesive, coherent sentence for the American people to understand. We have to decipher. This is sad. We literally have to decipher the American president's speeches. We can't just listen to him because he says words that aren't really words. We have to decipher what he's saying to try and get an understanding of what he means, because he can't articulate what he's thinking because he's demented. I mean, if there was a final president right before the collapse, I think it would be a Biden. Some president that's just like, not even there, slurring, old, demented. I mean, Biden might be the last president of, the United States empire. We don't know.
And we don't know. Although I will say, like, one good thing about that is, like, if you have someone who's cognizant and is evil like Trudeau, it's a lot scarier.
That's true. At least he's so stupid he can't actually be a good tyrant. That's a good point.
That's one thing I've told people. Like, hey, someone asked me like Biden or Trudeau. I'm like, maybe. I joked and I said Somali warlord, but then I'm like, I guess Trudeau because he's there. I'm like, wait, no, that means
he's consciously a tyrant. Yeah. You'd rather have someone who's not, who's too weak to be a tyrant, but is chaotic, and from the chaos, you get where we are now. But yeah, so yeah, we
get worse, because you can get worse, even though it's hard to.
Oh, I know you can. Like, I know it's possible, but I just don't know how you. I mean, Biden's one of the worst presidents all around, dude. When you look at him, and I don't think I'm being extreme. I don't think I'm being dramatic. If you look at all of the presidents we've had since George Washington, right? You look at all of them. Who is all around worse than Joe Biden? Listen, I hate Nixon.
No one.
I hated Nixon. I hated Carter, and I damn sure hated Obama, especially because I was alive during his administration. I hated all those presidents. I hated Woodrow Wilson. He was one of the worst. He was my top 3 worst. Maybe depending on the day. He and Bush would probably.
I still hate Bush.
Yes, he and Bush would always, but Biden's taking the cake, and he's taking it by a lot, because not only
Abraham Lincoln, then probably.
Yes, but I do. Okay, listen, I give Abraham Lincoln credit. I think he was a terrible president, but at least you can say Lincoln was the president who was obviously in office during the Civil War. So he gets that excuse, right? That's what I think is fair. I still think he was a tyrant, but if there was any reason to be a tyrant, it would be during the most like civilly divisive period of the United States. Like, he was the president overseeing the Civil War, and it was a lot of chaos. So I give him credit in that, but I damn sure don't think he was a great president. Like, I think he's overly worshipped. Simply for that reason. Simply for that reason. He was overly worshipped because he just was the president during the Civil War, and we got out of it. He just happened to be the president. We got out of it.
To have it though.
No, we didn't necessarily. Well, it depends on. Listen, I think there was a way to
Dr.
abolish
Salzman and
slavery.
me argued about this real hard.
What was his opinion? I'm curious.
We'll get him back, but I said he should have left it. And he said the Confederacy started it. And I'm like, they could have just let that fort go. You could have let that fort go instead of have 500,000 Americans die. I get it. A lot of people don't like that. Republicans don't like it when I'm like, well, I kind of think Lincoln was an imperious. Like,
I don't think you're thinking. I think you're just being honest when you say that. I mean, for Christ's sake, he suspended habeas corpses. The only other president we know who've done that is George W. Bush.
Yeah,
who also suspended habeas corpses.
That's why they're the top two I don't like. Then we can go to other ones I don't like. Probably Obama's next, and then
he was,
and then the rest of them fall in line. Carter's garbage too. The only Republican president I liked was Coolidge.
Coolidge. That's funny you say that because
Coolidge did nothing.
Yes,
the people are like, look at all these presidents' accomplishments. I'm like, I don't care. How about a president that just does nothing? Just like, hey, I'm here. Like, I'm not. Anyone. I'm not pushing any product.
And JFK, of course. I love JFK.
Yeah, JFK.
He has a special place in my heart.
Even JFK, I'll take Coolidge over that because I'm not printing money. I'm not bombing anybody. I'm not doing anything. I'm just here. Hi, how you doing? Like, what's up? That's good to me. Then, and you know what? Maybe that has an advantage. I'm like, guys, look, it's not anarchy. We have a president. He's just not doing anything. Woo.
But yeah, you can't rely on that always being the case. So that's part of the problem, right? Is that presidents over the years have gotten more and more, have just gotten through sheer force more and more control over the executive branch, and they have more and more jurisdiction over more and more things that, you know, typically back in the day that the executive branch didn't have, jurisdiction over. And one of those things, I think the best example is war, right? They have essentially, unchecked powers when it comes to bombing different countries because of all these extra judicial technicalities and droning and all this stuff that you shouldn't just be able to bomb someone in the Middle East. You shouldn't just be able to do that.
Yeah, because everybody has acted, aside from Klaus Schwab, everybody's been part of the Mohammed bin Salman minute. Oh, MBS, what do you want me to do? They all come in. Oh, I'll show them. I'll show Saudi Arabia. I'm like, good. That's even why I was optimistic. Like, even when I hear that, and I know nothing's going to happen, I become like that much optimistic. I'm like, can someone stick it to this guy? Like, why are we even friends with this guy? Why are we friends with Saudi Arabia? Out of all the countries you could want to be friends with, I don't know. Just seems like a bad idea, but everybody comes in. Oh, I'll get Saudi Arabia. I'll show them.
Including Trump, mind you.
Yeah, I was optimistic when Trump said that. I was like, okay, good. Let's see what he does. Then
Let's sell him a bunch of weapons.
Yeah, then sell him a bunch of weapons. And Biden's like, I'll stop it. Did nothing. And everybody's just like being lapdogs of the Saudis. I'm like, come on, grow some balls. These guys were behind, quote unquote, like the attack, and you just don't care. Like, it just, but they're our strategic ally. Iran's so scary. Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, that's just to me is a dumb talking point. Like, Iran is, to me, out of the ones you should be worried about is China, but like Russia and Iran, no. Just my perspective.
Yeah, and out of all the countries that commit the most, human rights violation, I mean, Saudi Arabia is up there in the most egregious out of all of them, and it's so clear, it's so plain. I mean, you got to wonder what the hell those Saudi Arabian companies or politicians have on these American politicians. You got to wonder what they have on some
business.
It
could just be money. Like a lot of these,
I don't know. That just seems like it's not quite. If it was just money, then couldn't it be the case? Wouldn't it be the case that these presidents could come in and make business deals, but also have some sort of strategic offensive against Saudi Arabia? It's like, okay, I want to make money, but I'm also going to go after you because you're a human rights violator. But that's not the case. It's almost like we're going to make business deals, and I'm just going to pretend that you don't exist.
Yeah,
and help you fight Yemen.
Yeah, and help you fight in Yemen. Like, that's the craziest. Out of everything, the United States should be mad at Saudi Arabia. Why? Because all these feminists who are like, oh, you don't respect women. Well, I can show you a society that really doesn't. They're not for religious freedom. They don't respect women. They have a crazy war. They killed a journalist in their own thing. Just doused him in acid. Did that. they don't like us. Wahhabism comes out of there. Like, at what point is this just a bad idea? Like, they don't even, I don't even think they even like, it's like an ally that doesn't even like you. At least England pretends to like us. I'm not sure if they do sometimes. But yeah, that's the ridiculous thing to me with all this. So yeah, there's some really bad presidents. Joe Biden is probably up there. I don't know who's the worst, but he's definitely up there with the worst. I still give George Bush the credit, though, for his garbage. The Cheney administration, as Paul called it. That was funny. But I'd say he's a close second or third. I'm still mad at Abraham Lincoln for his imperialist stuff. But yeah, Joe Biden's horrible. That being said, I'll close it out with one last story. This one is crazy. So we talk about Epstein. Everybody knows about Epstein. I'm actually a little bit, I want to see the list, but I'm kind of like not hopeful until things really start to collapse, and then someone can break into like some database or something, or someone.
It'll come out. That's one thing I do have hope for in today's
It'll come out.
is that whether we beat these global organizations, whether the individual ends up being prosper, information's going to get out there. It's going to get out there one way or another. That's one thing I will count on.
I do count on that. I just don't count on the conventional way. So FBI protected mom who made $200 million selling up to 8,000 children over 40 years.
What?
Only 3 months in MIM security prison.
That's crazy.
On September 21st, Health Impact News. Let's take a look at it. Margaret Cole Hughes, Director of European Adoption Consultants, EAC, earlier this year accepted a plea deal from the U.S. Department of Justice to one count of conspiracy to defraud the United States and one count of making a false statement to Polish Central Authority in front of federal court judge James Gwynne in the U.S. District Court in the Northern District of Ohio. Defense attorneys admit in the court's filings Cole is still in the business after making $200 million over 40 years, selling 8,000 children through a fraudulent international adoptions. According to Judge James Gwynne, the FBI protected Cole's trafficking for 40 years. Sounds like someone else. Failed to investigate her. Instead, the State Department investigated Cole. I don't know how many reasons you can have to hate the FBI, that they're politically motivated, that they honestly failed, if you want to consider it fail on 9/11. I think they enabled it, that they go after people who have mental issues and get them to commit heinous acts. But I think the worst thing is, out of everything, the one thing that they could do is go after people who and they don't. And people like Christopher Wray just don't care about that. To me, I think I was watching Luke. He said, like, people probably like Ray and Ray's administration because it's basically a quasi-government. Forget about this stuff and then go after their political opponents. So if there's a Republican in charge, Democrats. If there's Democrats in charge, you go after Republicans. They're just a political tool. Cole's stepson, Robert E. Hughes, still works for the FBI. He was assigned to investigate a case by Andy McCabe, who at the time was the acting director of the FBI. Defense attorneys said the evidence against the client would have filled the Library of Congress. Cole's wanted for child trafficking in Poland. Margaret Cole Hughes, 75, began a 3-month sentence in Alderson Federal Prison as a result of her plea deal in a resort of Green Bar, West Virginia. Meanwhile, according to Congressman Jim Jordan, the top Republican in the House Judiciary Committee, a whistleblower has come forward exposing how the FBI is manipulating cases related to the January 6th Capitol riot to create the illusion that domestic violence extremism is a wide problem in the United States, and that the FBI's pivot is coming at the expense of other serious crimes, most notably the investigation of what they're doing here. And the whistleblower just goes, the FBI is sacrificing its other important federal law enforcement duties. I don't think they have any. I don't believe in the federal government to pursue January 6 investigations. The whistleblower recalled, for example, being told that all this abuse of material investigations were no longer an FBI priority and should be referred to local law enforcement agencies. At least I agree with him there. That should be a local law enforcement task to handle that. I would feel a lot better if that was done by my sheriff. That being said, yeah, I just want to highlight the FBI is useless or malevolent once again. And I go on the side of malevolent. I don't see a point to keeping this, the CIA, or any alphabet agency in existence. But I don't see a point in the White House existing. Now, can an anarchist, complete ANCAP stand society work? I don't know. But let's start with the Articles of Confederation. Let's dwindle that down and see how close we can get to Rothbard. And that's my thing on the FBI.
Yeah. And I would pretty much agree with everything you said. And also remind conservatives and the libertarian types that just because that some organization, institution, whatever the sort of mechanism be, just because that mechanism at one point in time might be useful as a tool for you politically, does not mean that in the future that useful mechanism cannot be used as a tool politically against you, right? Be careful when making tools because they can both be used by you, but also by your enemies and your adversaries. And that's what these conservatives have done. When you look at the Patriot Act, I mean, conservatives have done this to themselves. Conservatives have built the security state. They've built and
Oh yeah,
pumped
they argued with
NSA
me.
that is now
Yeah,
and the IRS that's now coming after them, that's now spying on them, that's now they've given a great deal of power to these big tech companies, and they've expanded the FBI, the CIA, the military. I mean, all those conservative presidents and all those Bushes and Reagans and all those and Trumps included, that made the security state bigger and larger and funded and appointed guys like Ray. Let's not forget who appointed Ray. Let's not forget that that was Trump when that occurred. They can't really blame anyone else but themselves. And feeling, or maybe not feeling, but I don't know what their opinion was, but at one point in time, making these tools, giving these centralized agencies tools, and then those tools, when they're politically out of control, when they no longer have political control, those tools are being used against them. Under Bush, they were used to spy on the American people, but also go after terrorists in the war on terror. And then Obama got in and used those tools that were used to spy on the war of the terrorists to spy on American people and conservatives. And that's all open now. We all know that now. And those tools were given to the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. They have all those tools now. And of course, they're being weaponized.
I'd even argue when Bush started, was it all people or was it profile? This guy looks Middle Eastern and he kind of disagrees with me.
Yes.
That's the problem. Even the Bush administration, it's like, I disagree with Iraq. Like, oh, okay. Well,
they hate liberty. They hate freedom. It's like, okay, go ahead and build a mechanism. Go ahead and build a mechanism that goes after an entire, group, religion, ethnicity of people under the guise of they hate your freedom. And let's see how slippery that slope gets, because it's gotten pretty damn slippery. That whole NSA spying thing. I mean, again, conservatives can blame no one else but themselves for the consequences and the ramifications and the current situation when it comes to drugs, fentanyl. That's all them, right? A lot of that is them. Now, I know that's the older generation of conservatives. I know a lot of the modern conservatives are sort of more pro decriminalization of drugs, but they started the drug war. They started the war on terror. And they started a lot of these wars. They started the war on, actually, that was Democrats and Republicans, but the war on poverty, that was both administrations. But anyways, the point is they are responsible for this. And this should be an eye-opening moment for current younger conservatives to say, these tools will always end up being used against us because political power is temporary. And so long as political power is temporary, the tools you create will always be used against you at one point and another. So you have to come to the idea, and you have to come to the place of, why don't, instead of building these tools that can be used against us, why don't we just get rid of all the tools, or at least try to get rid of all the tools that can be used against us, not make any more tools, and limit the amount of control these centralized organizations have, limit what their authority, and end things like the Fed and end things like the CIA, and get rid of these tools that, yes, we've created. Take accountability for starting the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and funding it and pumping it up. Take credit for that. Take accountability, but say it's time to get rid of what we started. It's time to get rid of these tools. They've done enough damage. We've seen the consequences. Let's get rid of them. Let's roll it back.
Yeah, 100%. So with that, that's all I got for today. Thank you for coming on, Daniel. I thought it was a really good show. Is there anything you want to shout out before we end?
Just check out my YouTube, Conquering the Divide, and then on Facebook, The Quantum Effect Show, and then check out my website, thequantumeffectstore.org. and get yourself a t-shirt, a mug. I got, tons of products on there. Support me, support the operation and my own show. And as always, I enjoy talking with you, Kareem. But go check out Dave Smith, Michael Malice, Luke Radowski, Tim Pool. I like to shout those guys out because they're doing great work on the sort of like news and journalist front, especially Luke. And also this the last shout out. If you are a conservative or a libertarian or libertarian leaning or center right, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're in the land of freedom or liberty, right? So saith yourself. If you're pro liberty, you should be talking about the Alex Jones trial right now, because what's going on with Alex Jones is a complete war. It is a complete boot on free speech. That's what it is. It's a boot on free speech and a boot on journalists' ability to question major events. That's what this Alex Jones trial is. It's really about free speech, and I don't see a lot of conservatives talking about it. You know why? Because conservatives are scared. They're usually typically scared people, and they don't want to talk about Alex Jones because the media apparatus has obviously destroyed him. And anyone who says anything positive about Alex Jones is a right-wing extremist conspiracy theorist. So they're all scared to come to Alex Jones's defense because they don't want to be labeled as a conspiracy theorist. I don't give a shit. What's going on with him in his trial right now is so tyrannical. It's North Korea, Soviet Union level corrupt. I mean, he's not even allowed to say that he's innocent, nor is he allowed to say the names Hillary Clinton or what was the other one? Megyn Kelly. He's not even allowed to say names. He's been told that he in the court, if he says that he's innocent and that what's going on right now was not correct and that he had a right to question Sandy Hook, if he says he had a right to question Sandy Hook, the judge said that she will hold him in contempt. So that whole court case is just insane. But that's it.
Yeah, no, that definitely is it. And thanks for bringing light to that. I disagree with him and Steven Crowder's comments, and I think they're wrong. I don't think people should be persecuted like this because, hey, everybody, at least in a free society, whether it's classical liberal, minarchist, or an ANCAP society, in my opinion, even if you are a total tyrant or if you're not, deserves due process. With that, check out lpmisescaucus.com. Sign up to be a delegate if you'd like. Got some big stuff going for organizers. Super excited for what's next. And I will catch you next time. This is Kareem with the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance.